Hello guys, today I'm going to do a video on LEGO Star Wars, the SKYWALKER Saga with the Steam Deck. Here we are, jumping into the settings and playing the game at 800p with the high settings. Looking good. I'm going to start from the high settings and work my way down to the low settings. But as you can see already, we're doing fantastic, sitting at 80 FPS. Just running beautifully. No stuttering yet at all. But normally this game doesn't really lag or stutter until you get to specific areas. Like the clone factory, or the droid factory I should say. And I believe on Endor as well. Those two levels I know for a fact used to lag and stutter on most systems. So although it's running fine right now, I want to see how it runs in those levels. Now from the launch day, I don't think we got too many updates for this game. We got some character packs I believe. I don't think we got any actual updates for the performance. So if that's the case, the game should still lag and stutter, but I guess we'll see once we get there. Now, sitting at the high settings, we're pulling around 11 watts of power for the GPU and 2 watts of power for the CPU, which means the power draw is going to be around 28 watts, which is going to leave us with around 1 hour and 30 minutes of battery life. So, for portable play, I would avoid playing the game at high settings, and especially with the uncapped frame rate. For this type of game, you can play at 30 FPS or 40 FPS, and still have a great time. Ideally 60 FPS is the goal, but for portable play, way too intensive I think for us. Let's go to build. Boom. Alright. What's going on? Shoot this up. Alright, let's get going. Very nice. Get this guy out of here. Alright, yeah, not getting any stuttering, but we are getting some FPS dips into the mid-50s. Game's running really nicely though, I gotta say. Okay, getting some stutters right now actually. Maybe I spoke too soon. I'm gonna steal their outfit. Open this door up. You guys are all done by the way, you guys are all dead. Wow, 48 FPS there for a second. That was very CPU intensive. Alright, here we are on Droid Factor, and as you can see, FPS is far lower, sitting in the low 40s already. This part isn't even the most intensive yet. We got another scene that should tank the FPS far lower. There we go, 30 FPS. Okay, unfortunately this game hasn't been patched yet. It's been like a year I think at this point. So I don't think it will ever get patched. There's a couple of scenes that the game will lag heavily on pretty much every system. So if you don't want to have any lag spikes or any stuttering, go with a 30 FPS cap. Because I think the lowest FPS that I've seen it hit is around 35. But if you don't mind it, because it happens only a couple times, you can go ahead and use the 40 FPS cap or a 60 FPS cap as well. Alright, as you can see right here, we're getting 25 to 29 FPS. Very laggy indeed. And the funny thing is that our power draw is down to 2 watts for CPU and GPU, so the system isn't being fully utilized here. Alright, here we are at the medium settings now. I've disabled TAA, so the game will look far sharper than before. No blurriness to the view of the game at all. Looks incredibly good with that TAA. And now FPS is sitting in the mid-70s up to the mid-80s. Alright, here we're still dropping down into the 60s, so the same as the high settings. Or even the 50s at times as well. But honestly, the game isn't really stuttering or lagging, so the FPS dips aren't really a problem yet. But I'll let you guys know once it starts stuttering and lagging. Gonna kill these stormtroopers real quick. FPS is very similar to what we had at the high settings, but on the top end it's far better sitting in the 80s and 90s, whereas with the high settings we could never hit the 80s and 90s. What is my guy doing? What's Leia doing? Whoa, I think it's just glitching out. That's weird. Now as you can see, the game is really utilizing one CPU core only, CPU core 0, which is kind of unfortunate, but oops, I'm misclicking. I'm just trying to build this, man. Let's go left this time. That was kind of laggy, sitting at 40 FPS right there. 37 FPS. Yep, this laser effect is just tanking our FPS completely. Look at that. But still able to hold 30 FPS, so not too bad. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and quit and go on Droid Factory. Alright, here we are on Droid Factory. And FPS is still, no, actually in the 50s now. We're sitting at 40 something FPS on the high settings. Now as long as we can actually hold 30 FPS properly, then I think it'll be fine, because we had some dips into the low 20s at the high settings. So if we can avoid that, that'd be very nice. Ball is up. Oh, the game is feeling kind of laggy at this point, I gotta say. Okay, so we still get some dips into the mid-20s, unfortunately, but at least it's not the low 20s, so an improvement overall, but not quite perfect yet. Okay, so playing the game with the low settings now. Let's go jump into the settings real quick. I think I forgot to show them. And here we are with the low preset. So FPS is sitting in the 80s up to the 90s, but we are getting CPU bottleneck at this point, so FPS might not improve too much from medium to low settings, but we'll see how we go. Run up here real quick. Yep. Game feels quite smooth so far. This game's only using up one core of the CPU, and the clock's already maxed out, so can't really get much performance out of it. And that's why FPS is not improving from medium to low. There's not really much point in us playing at the low settings because the FPS will be the same or very similar to medium settings. So I might just skip this portion and go to Droid Factory for a little bit and then optimize the settings and move on from there. Alright, so for the battery life, I'm going to be playing the game at 960 by 600 with the optimized settings and with a 30 FPS cap as well. And 30 FPS honestly feels fine. Not the most smooth or the most responsive, I should say, but still good enough to have a great time on the handheld. And as you can see in this scene, we are able to get around 4 hours of battery life pretty much, very close to it. But this area is quite light, I would say. It's not very intensive at all. I think the true number would be on Droid Factory, where it's far more intensive on the CPU and GPU. But with these settings, you should be able to get around 3 hours of battery life, I think on average. Go to the left. And there we are. Alright, let's see how we will do. Okay, so power draw is not really moving too much. CPU usage is going up to 2 watts, but honestly it's not too bad. I'm going to sit here for a little bit and see how much it will impact our power draw, because it will take a while for it to go up. Slowly climbing up to 10.8 watts now almost. Yep, there it is. Not too bad. Alright, here we are in Droid Factory. Surprisingly able to hold 30 FPS without an issue. Look at that. Wow. This is incredible. Because as you remember with the low settings, we were dropping down into the mid-20s. We had a couple of dips into the high 20s, like 29 FPS, but honestly, it's not too bad at all. Very nice. And power draw is still down to 1.5 watts on the CPU and 2 watts for the GPU. So battery life should be unaffected from what we had before. So 3 hours battery life with this game is very much doable. Surprisingly. Alright, playing the game in dock mode, which is at 1080p. Here we are. And still at the optimized settings. Perfect. Look at that, 60 FPS in this area. Amazing. It's not the most intensive area, obviously, but still cool to see that we can get 60 FPS at 1080p with the Steam Deck. Now, I looked this up, and on the PS4 version of this game, you get 1080p at 30 FPS, so we're doing far better than the PS4 right now. But obviously 60 FPS isn't going to be stable. We will have some dips into the 30s and 40s, I would guess. But we'll see as we go. Now, although we can get 30 to 40 FPS on average at 1080p without an issue, I want to see how this runs on Droid Factory. So let's see if we can hold that stable 30 on this level. Alright, let's get going. Alright, so far we are doing quite good. But let's give it a second. Oh, that felt very laggy there for a second. 24 FPS. And yeah, so not the most stable, I would say. It's not too bad either. It's still definitely playable in my opinion. And like I mentioned before, we can go ahead and lower the resolution down to 900p and use FSR to upscale to 1080p. Alright, here we are as R2 and 2-3PO. And we're getting 22 FPS. So can't quite match the PS4 here. Very laggy. But this could still be viable to you, because this only happens a couple times throughout the game. So although we're getting around 20 FPS here, on average on most levels you can get around 30 to 45 FPS quite easily. Now in this portion of the video I'm going to be testing out the SD card speeds and performance. I'm using a SanDisk Ultra as well, just keep that in mind. And I will also have the load times on your screen as I'm playing as well, so you guys can have a look at the differences between the internal SSD and the SanDisk Ultra. Okay, so playing through, we're getting 90 FPS, so very similar to what we had before. with the internal SSD. But the main thing we're looking for right now is any stuttering or any pauses due to the game loading off the SD card. So far the game has ran beautifully, no stuttering and no lagging that I could feel, and there was no pauses as well due to the game trying to load in the background. In games like Spider-Man Remastered, you definitely do see some pauses if the game's running off the SD card, while on the SSD it doesn't do that. But it makes sense because Spider-Man is an open world game, while this is more linear. Now this game does have free roam as well. You can go through each planet and explore and collect all the, I guess, secrets. But again, it's not as big as Spider-Man, so I think you should be fine. So yeah, that's about it guys. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time for the next video. See you guys there.